pleased to bring in now senior NFL writer for The Ringer, Sheil Kapadia, who's been compiling his offensive and defensive rankings heading into the 2025 season on TheRinger.com. And, well, Bills fans, you'll be pretty happy with where he has Buffalo's offense because he's got him in the number one slot. And I guess this is, I mean, we saw how good the offense was last year. If you're just going on total points, the Bills scored more than anybody, even more than Philadelphia and Kansas City, and those two teams played an extra football game. So if you count playoffs, nobody scored more points than Buffalo. But I think it's really the efficiency that speaks to me, and judging by your write-up, you feel similarly.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, there's all sorts of stats you can look at now, points per game, some of the advanced stats, all those things. And really, by any metric you look at, it's not only last year, but the last 3 seasons, the Bills have been in the top 3 offensively every single season. So, you know, the short version, the too long didn't read version is Josh Allen's really good at football. And as long as he's healthy and he's out there, you're probably going to have a pretty good offense. But, you know, I know they did some things differently last year, maybe a little bit more balanced, maybe running the football more, taking care of the football. And I just feel like they have such a high floor with that offensive line, assuming it can stay healthy, where you can move some of the other pieces around. And not that it doesn't matter, but they still are going to be one of the best offenses in the NFL. So, yeah, they're the offense that I feel the best about going into 2025.
And one of the reasons, you know, you can point at Josh. Certainly they've changed. You pointed this out as well. They changed wide receivers during the last couple of years. They've changed coordinators in the last couple of years. They've got a different running backs room in the last couple of years. And they haven't wavered. They're top 3 offense. And it starts with Josh, obviously, and it's you can't get the guy off the field. You can't sack him, and he rarely takes a negative play, and it just wears teams out.
Yeah, the sack, I'm glad you brought up the sack avoidance thing, because that's a huge thing in the NFL. I think right now you can look at a bunch of different factors, but the quarterbacks who, even when they're pressured, they find a way to avoid those negative plays, whether it's turning it into a positive, whether it's a scramble, a throwaway, maybe you're taking a sack, but it's like a 1-yard loss, whatever the case may be. It's a big, big deal because there are other quarterbacks who are really good, but when they get pressured, they take those sacks, and the sack rates are really high. And as we know, when you get sacked on any given possession, the numbers have shown historically that a lot, you know, that's going to kill your possession a lot of different times. And so, you know, you have 11 possessions in a game, whether you get sacked 6 times or 2 times, that makes a really big difference. And Josh Allen, to me, is the best guy in the NFL right now at just not taking those sacks and those negative plays.
2, 3, and 4 on your offensive list are Baltimore, San Fran, and Green Bay. So you're clearly expecting a big bounce back year for San Fran, who was really beset with injuries last year, particularly at the skill positions. But man, what a week 1 matchup Sunday night. If you got Baltimore and Buffalo here, your 2 top-ranked offenses, best of luck to those 2 defenses, respectively, on Sunday night.
Yeah, that's going to be a lot of fun. I mean, obviously, last 2 years, these have been the MVP candidates, each of them winning one of them. I think they're the 2 best offenses in the NFL. I think they're 2 legit Super Bowl contenders. We could either do it AFC or league-wide, and they've got to be on anyone's short list. I mean, I don't know how you don't have them on there. You really look at the last 5 years, and it's like it's so rare for a team to have a stretch like either the Ravens or the Bills where they're just knocking on the door and are that close and don't break through. So I feel like it's going to happen one of these years. Is it going to be one of these this year? We will see, but they've both been right there, and that's going to be a lot of fun with those 2 guys in week 1.
Yeah, there's a lot on social media between Baltimore Raven fans and Bills fans, Lamar and Josh, and both sides have to concede how good both guys are. You know, the Ravens fans have to look at Josh and say, yeah, he's pretty good, and Bills fans, same thing. I mean, how do you sneeze at what Lamar has done in the league? Both these guys are absolute massive forces on the field. How do you compare and contrast these 2 guys? Certainly the year that Lamar had last year was off the charts. And just like Josh was such a huge part of his offense, how do you compare and contrast Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen? I know they're both awesome, but somebody, you know, at some point you got to pick one or the other if you're going to have a discussion about it. Where do you make the distinction?
Yeah, they really are video game numbers, man. When you just look at their pro football reference pages and just in the offseason when I'm doing my summer prep and I look at Lamar Jackson and 41 touchdowns, 4 interceptions passing, and then he runs for 900 yards. Like this was, this is not a thing that's supposed to be, that's supposed to happen in the NFL. So he's right there. I would probably give Josh Allen the slight edge because of the durability factor. Now, guys can get injured at any time in the NFL, but Josh Allen to me is sort of like LeBron James in the NBA, where if he were to go down with an injury, it really has to be something severe. You just feel like he's usually the one delivering the punishment on those runs. He's been so tough. He's been so durable. Lamar Jackson's been very durable in recent years. He had a couple of years earlier in his career where he missed 5 games, I think in back-to-back seasons. So just for that, I would probably give Josh Allen the edge. But yeah, if I'm an expansion team, if I'm an owner, I'll take either one of them as my quarterback, and you're probably going to have a top 5 offense, and you're going to be in the play. I mean, they've each won, I think, over 70% of their games, which, again, it's like you can move all the pieces around them, defensively, coaching, whatever, and you just have that quarterback on the field, you're probably going to win 70% of your games.
Flipping it over to your defensive rankings for this coming season, it's not surprising to see the Bills kind of right smack dab in the middle in light of their struggles last year, where the only thing they did well on defense on a consistent basis was take the football away. Getting off the field on third down was a monumental problem. Their sacks dropped considerably from the year before when they were in the top 3. They only had 38 last year. So they decided to make the investment up front. And I would say for the first time in a long time, a defense that had been built from the back forward with the likes of Hyde and Poyer and Tre'Davious White as a young man, they kind of went the other way and invested heavily up front, hoping that fixes some of the ills. But there are concerns about the secondary here going into the regular season. So how do you see that unit?
Yeah, I look at him overall, and I don't think Sean McDermott has had what I would call a bad defense since he got there. I think he sets a certain floor where, hey, you might be middle of the pack. There might be some weeks where it doesn't look good, but you're not going to be, a bottom 8, a bottom 10 defense in the NFL. Now, I think in the playoffs is where I have some concerns with the Bills defense. They've just had a tough time against the great quarterbacks in the AFC coming up with game plans to keep their offense in the game. I mean, even going back to last year and the way Josh Allen that offense played, and I know they had a chance at the end, but I feel like there's been a number of those games where they're just having trouble in those one-off games, and these are great quarterbacks they're facing, so a lot of teams have trouble against them. But that, to me, is the next step in the Bills' defense. So it's almost unfair to say, but you can tell me the regular season goes any one way. I need to see it in the playoffs if they're going to kind of get over the hump there. So the way they're built, I feel like they've made that investment in the defensive line over the years, and they got a lot of good players. They just don't have kind of that game wrecker where you say, hey, it's third down against Patrick Mahomes in the fourth quarter. Who's the guy who's going to be able to pressure him and force him into a negative play? So Rousseau, Ed Oliver, they're taking the flyer on Joey Bosa this year. Epinesa. I mean, these are good players, but I think they would love for just one of those guys to kind of emerge and be able to be a game wrecker in a big spot. So I'm with you on the back end. Yeah, obviously, I'm sure in Buffalo, you guys are probably tired of talking about the second cornerback spot, but obviously that's going to be a concern going into the season. Can they get something, adequate out of that spot so it's not a player just being picked on? That's probably the biggest concern I would look at right now on the defense.
And even if you do spin it all positive, how good is Joey Bosa at his best? He would be the centerpiece of the free agent, and also Michael Hoyt as well from the Rams so when he gets back from a 6-game suspension. But if you spin it positive and these guys do play their best, like Mike Hoyt and Joey Bosa, stays healthy, gives them 20 games, through the playoffs, all of that stuff, how good are those guys? Even if they play their
Bosa,
best.
It's obviously been a health thing for a while now. Can he stay, if he can stay healthy? And so for him, it's not necessarily like I don't need to see him have 14 sacks in the regular season. I know they're doing a lot of things to kind of manage his workload, and they're thinking about that. I know when they had Von Miller, they were thinking about that. Hey, how can we get this guy healthy in the playoffs? Now, that didn't work out, but I think it's a similar mentality here where if there are little things in the regular season where you say, hey, do we need to manage his snap count? Do we need to help him out here during the practice week? Those kinds of things, because there's only a handful of teams where you say it's kind of about what happens in January over the regular season. Not to say you're not trying to win every week. We know you're trying to do that. You're trying to get the 1 seed, but I do think they're one of these teams that kind of has the end game in mind, and having a healthy, productive Joey Bosa in January, that would be a difference maker for them.
And then with respect to some of the defenses you ranked pretty high, the Bills face 3 of the ones you've got in the top 5, Baltimore, Philly, and Houston. Fortunately, 2 of those are at home. But, I mean, these are defenses that are going to bring it. Just your thoughts on some of those teams you've got in the top 5 there, Baltimore, Philly, and Houston.
Yeah, defenses are always hard to project year to year. A lot of things change. Offensively, if you have the same quarterback and the play caller, you kind of know what you're going to get year to year. And defensively, it's different. That Ravens defense really came on in the second half of last season with a new defensive coordinator. So I think they're going to kind of, not that you always build on one year to the next, but I think they've got the pieces in place specifically in that secondary to be a good unit. Houston, I think, has a chance to be the best defense in the NFL. You know, I think their front is really impressive. I think they're really well coached, and they've got a number 1 corner on the back end in Derek Stingley. And then the Eagles, we saw what they did last year. I mean, no one has made Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid look like that when you look at the first 3 quarters of the Super Bowl when the game was really decided. That had not happened previously in a playoff game with the Chiefs. So Eagles have some issues. You know, they lost some guys in free agency, but I go back to the coaching there with a guy like Vic Fangio who's seen it all, and they've still got some young players there where I think all those defenses are going to be pretty good this year.
So if you talk about, and we've spoken about it already in this segment about, you know, the Bills and the Ravens getting on the door and knocking on it, you know, year after year after year. What are some teams that are maybe dark horses that come out of the woodwork and vie for, you know, the Baltimores and the Bills and the Kansas City, you know, those 3 teams who have been there perpetually over the last handful of years? Who else is going to join that party?
Yeah, those 3 are kind of on their own tier, where I think if you ask people, hey, you can have those 3 or you can have the rest of the AFC, I think most people would just say, I'll take my chances with those 3. That's how it's been. But if there is a sleeper, you know, the Bengals, the defense on paper is not good enough. But if Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and T. Higgins are putting up 30, I mean, they're going to be tough to defend on a weekly basis. So if they find a way to get some of their young players, they've invested a lot of draft capital in that defense. If some of those younger players can improve this year and they can just have, you know, an average defense, maybe a little below average defense, just something that's different than last year when they couldn't even be competitive, I wouldn't rule them out completely. And then the other one is Houston. You know, I don't think Houston's generating a lot of buzz. The way their offense kind of took a step back last year, people are out on them. I have a lot of concerns about their offensive line, but I still do like C.J. Stroud. I like their pass-catching talent, and I like their defense. They're in a division that's not that impressive, so maybe they pile up some wins in the regular season. So if it's not those top 3, those are probably 2 of the names that would come to mind.
Yeah, Houston with a new coordinator, too, and Nick Caley, who comes over from the Rams system, so that'll be interesting to see how that materializes as well. Sheil, thanks for the time as always. We are on the cusp of the regular season, so we'll catch up with you down the line, but enjoy kickoff week next week.
All right, guys, thanks for having me. Talk to you soon.
All right, that's Sheil Kapadia joining us.